Thank you for tuning in to the Writing Community Chat show. My name is Chris, and we were so excited for this episode, me and Terry actually forgot to record an introduction, so we pick up where he was asking me about my experiences. Thank you for tuning in. I wanted to do a few more shows this week, but there are only two, Tuesday and Thursday, but they're both fantastic, so please do tune in, enjoy the show, and leave us your comments and thoughts. Thank you. So when I was in the forces in basic training, they took us to a battlefield tour in France, and I was 19 at the time, very young, quite naive about kind of what I was going to see and all of those things. And at the time we went to the Thiepval, and I did see my surname on the thousands of names on there. So I was never really sure on who that was. So it's really interesting to kind of get that insight and trying to look into this now and find out where our history comes from, because there's a lot of people out there that probably don't realize that their family tree goes back to that.
That's right. It's happening all the time. People find out, in the strangest of ways.
Yeah. I mean, for you, Terry, I mean, there's a lot of history there in your own family, and I've been looking at your website, which does kind of explain a lot of that. And if anyone's interested, go and check that out. I'll post the link in the description. But, where did it start for you, and kind of what was your interest in it when you were kind of a young boy, if you don't mind?
Yeah, it goes back to when I was about, 6 or 7 years old. And we, as a family, we were growing up in southeast London in Woolwich, which, of course, we had the Woolwich Arsenal and everything else was all around us, which I didn't really notice at that age. But I remember on Remembrance Day, on Remembrance Sunday, my dad suddenly standing to attention at 11 o'clock on Remembrance Sunday at the cenotaph. The soldiers were marching past the cenotaph. Our Queen was there. And he was saluting it. And I knew that my dad had served in the Second World War in the British Army. So I asked him what it was all about. And he said that he explained to me that his father had fought in the First World War. He'd served all 4 years. And also that we had an uncle, or a great uncle to me, that had died on the Somme in 1916. And that's all my dad knew. He didn't even know his name. And that was it, really. And then, as all little boys, we didn't have the internet or much television in the 1970s. So I used to buy all these comics and little plastic soldiers, and I used to set up my own battlefields, on the quilt in my bedroom and that, and all that sort of thing. And then, of course, life takes over. I went off to work. And then the internet came along, and the Commonwealth War Graves Commission launched their website. I think it was 2001, 2002, something like that. Seems a long time ago now. And on the website was all of the details of all of the soldiers that fell in both World Wars. So I did a quick search against my name, Whenham, which is spelled Whenham, which is quite unusual. Yeah. And up popped this Henry Whenham from the East Kent Regiment, the Buffs. And it said that he'd lived in Maidstone in Kent, and I knew that my family had lived in Maidstone 100 years ago, and that he died on the Somme. So I quickly rang my dad, and he said, "Yeah, I think that's him." He says, "You better ring your Uncle Dennis. He knows more about it than me." So I rang my Uncle Dennis. He said, "Yeah, that's definitely him. He's got a few details about him, not very much." But the story goes, I do remember my granddad, who, as my dad told me, he'd served in the Royal Garrison Artillery, the big guns in the First World War. And my granddad had been awarded the Distinguished Conduct Medal, bravery, which is just one down from the Victoria Cross. I've got his citation. It's in front of me on the wall here. And that was during the Battle of Ulber's Ridge in 1915. He was sent not out into no man's land, but just behind the front line. And so between the front line and where the big guns were firing. And for 3 days and 3 nights, his job was to mend the telephone lines that had been broken by German artillery fire. And his citation says that he did that for 3 days and 3 nights under continual shell fire from the Germans. Just one of those shells that wiped him out, couldn't it?
Of course, I mean, those lines were constantly cut and, in fact, buried quite deeply, weren't they, at some point?
Yeah, that's right. This was early on in the war, so it wasn't, very sophisticated, our communication links in May 1915. And I did remember my granddad. I was 8, 9 when he died. I knew that he'd fought in the First World War, but I was terrified of him, to be honest. He was quite a dominating character, and he didn't say very much. But he wouldn't, would he? He certainly wouldn't talk to his 8-year-old grandson about what he'd experienced in the war. Now, the story goes that on the night that Uncle Henry was wounded, my granddad was moving up with the Royal Garrison Artillery on the Somme. And as they did so, he saw his brother, his younger brother, Henry, lying on a stretcher on the side of the road. It was what was called an advanced dressing station, a place called Bicourt. And that was it. The next day, Henry died of his wounds. And nobody saw Henry again. Obviously, he died. Nobody visited his grave until 85 years later, 2 weeks after finding out about Henry. I was standing at his graveside. And the first thing that I noticed on his headstone, at the bottom of the headstone, families could choose their own words, called the family inscription. And Henry's family had chosen the words that I know came from the Bible. It said, "He died so that we might live." But of course, what then happened, the postscript to this story, is that Arthur, my granddad, went back to Maidstone at the end of the war, got discharged, and he went to comfort Henry's girlfriend, who was called Dolly. One thing led to another, and they got married. And I'm glad they did, because they became my grandparents.
Wow.
So he died so that we might live is true. Because if Henry hadn't died, history would have been different. My grandparents wouldn't have married, and me and my dad and my brother would never have been born.
That's incredible. That's a fantastic story.
You know, that's not what they meant. I didn't mean that. But that's how history turned out.
It's really interesting to go back to the days where you talk about the internet being invented and the horrible screeching internet back then as well. But how that kind of, opened the world for this sort of thing to happen, and you quite possibly would never have discovered that information without the intervention or the invention of the internet at the time.
No, well, the information was out there, but you had to write. People in the old days, they used to get this thing called a piece of paper, one of these things, a biro, and they'd write a letter, and they put it in an envelope, send it off to the Commonwealth War Graves Commission head office, which is in Maidenhead, and the commission would write back with the details of the casualty that they were looking for. They have these, and they still got them in the archives, these big ledgers with all the information. Yeah. And that's the only way you could do it. And of course, people didn't bother. And if you went to the cemeteries inside, and they're still there, inside the, as you walk in, you'll see this when you go on the Frontline Walk. As you go inside the cemetery, there's a brass cabinet. And inside the cabinet, there's a visitor's book. And inside of that is the register containing all of the names in alphabetical order. But to do that, to be able to find your casualty, you've got to know which cemetery he's in to start with. Which of course people don't know. So yes, the internet really did open it up, not just for military historians, but for family historians as well. Yeah,
it's one of those really interesting things. There's something that draws me and millions of other people to kind of the history of World War II, World War I, and kind of what's happened before us. But to be able to actually start to we got to thank thousands of people who've spent a lifetime putting this information together and finding out all these things. And as you mentioned, so many graves were lost at the time as well. So to be able to do this is a real privilege, I feel, at this time of our lives,
Yeah, there's about half of the, we've lost nearly 1 million soldiers from the Commonwealth, not just the British, but the Commonwealth from the First World War. And well over half have no known grave. Now, in my uncle's case, Henry, he was fortunate, if you like, because he wasn't killed in action. He was wounded and taken back to an ambulance station, and that's where he died of his wounds. So nearly everybody in that cemetery, they know who they are because they've died of their wounds, they've had an identity, and then they buried them. But if you go to places like Tynecott, which is the largest Commonwealth War Graves Commission cemetery anywhere in the world, there's nearly 12,000 casualties there, and 3/4 of them have no identity. We don't know who they are. They're known unto God. And that's because those soldiers have fallen in action, killed in action, most of them during the 1917 Battle of Passchendaele. And then they've stayed in the ground in all of the battlefields surrounding Tynecott, some of them in smaller cemeteries. And then in the 1920s, when they've cleared the battlefields, they found those bodies, brought them into Tynecott, and interned them, concentrated them into the large cemetery. But of course, as they've been in the ground for so long, they've lost their identity, and we don't know who they are.
Yeah, it's very sad.
Very different cemeteries that you'll see when you visit the Western Front.
So, Terry's Tours is something that you do as well. I mean, when you talked about finding that the headstone, was that kind of the first time you ventured into France to kind of discover that kind of world? Yeah. And was that what led you to go into Terry's Tours then?
Yes, it was. And Terry's Tours is a myth, really. It doesn't really exist. Terry's Tours is not an organisation. It's not a business. It's just me. Yeah. I just use it as a way of taking people to the battlefields what happened was that day that I stood looking at Henry's grave, I thought he was 21, not quite 21. And I was, I don't know, early 40s, I think, at the time. No, I wasn't, late 30s. And I thought to myself, well, I want to know more about him. I want to find out what happened to him, where it happened, all the rest of it. And I started to learn the skills that you needed to do that. As we said, the internet made it easier. And I enjoyed the process of doing it. So over the next few years, I was still running a business full time. But other people came to me, having heard about Henry's story, and said, oh, can you help me research my story? And then, of course, that leads you then to taking them over there on a family pilgrimage, which I did more and more over the next few years, in between still going to work. And then in 2014, the start of the centenary period of World War One, like you, I stumbled upon the Frontline Walk, the ABF, a soldiers' charity. And it was the first year they'd done it. The intention was it was just going to be for the 4 years of the centenary period. And that gave me the opportunity not just to help people, guide them on the battlefields, which is what I've been doing as a sort of unofficial guide for the charity, but also raise money for the soldiers of today. Because sitting in an office, as I've done for 40 years, pushing bits of paper around, this weekend, seeing the Queen's funeral yesterday with the Grenadier Guards and everybody else there, or the other armed forces, it really brings it home to everybody how important the armed forces are to us. And as a civilian, it's given me the chance to put something back, to say thank you to people like yourselves that have served. And that's what the Soldiers' Charity's done for me. So the guiding came out of that, really, came out of me going to see Uncle Henry, researching his story, doing the same for other people, and it's grown from there. I'm doing sort of between 15 and 20 tours a year now.
Wow.
And then that's led on to me doing stuff for a company called Ledger Battlefield Tours, who are the biggest battlefield tour company in the country. So I do work for them, but I don't earn any money from it. It's going to be a hobby for me. I've got my pension. I haven't got any kids. I've only got a wife. She doesn't spend very much money. I live off my pension. All the money that I get from doing battlefield tours goes straight back to the ABF, the Soldiers' Charity. So it's been massive for me.
What springs to mind when you say that is kind of selfless act, and you rightly spoke about the Queen and that effect it's had on everybody, and what seems to be coming from the general public and mass is the fact that her selfless commitment throughout her, amazing time spent being the monarch. And at 19 years old, same time that I joined up, very different times completely that she joined up in the army. And it's just incredible for people like yourselves, and the Queen was above and beyond anything I've ever seen, and to be able to give that sort of life to you're helping a lot of people, and I think that's a really sort of valued thing, and it's fantastic. So thank you for doing that. But
it's also a selfish thing to do, because I get so much from it. I really get so much pleasure from seeing soldiers, what the charity does for them. You'll see that there'll be veterans that come on the Frontline Walk. Some you won't know that they're disabled, that they've got an injury, because it'll be a mental injury. Others, their injuries will be very visible because they'll have limbs missing. But to be able to walk alongside these guys and listen to their stories as they open up, as they do, I can't put this down. It's something that I've got to do in memory of my granddad and my uncle, and also thinking about my old dad. He was so lucky, my dad. I used to rib him to say that when D-Day came around, he wasn't there. He wasn't on the beaches of Normandy. He was in a convalescent home somewhere in Suffolk, I think it was, because he'd somehow managed to drop an engine part on his foot and break his foot. So when everybody else was rushing across, Gold Beach, facing German machine guns, he was playing cards with a nurse. And as soon as he went abroad, the war ended, and he ended up going to Japan for 2 years, and he was in the Army Service Corps. He was running the laundry department for the Army.
Wow.
And getting drunk with Australian soldiers and enjoying the company of beautiful young Japanese girls. And all he would say was, I went where they sent me.
Which is true. I mean, so the ABF Soldiers Charity, I mean, on your website, I've noticed it says that you managed to raise $60,000 for the charity, which is absolutely incredible. I mean, firstly, how have you done that? I mean, what kind of techniques do you have, or do you have any special techniques for that?
It's basically just hard work, really. As I say,
Yeah.
all of the fees I get from doing guiding go to the charity. The most profitable thing that we've been able to do is this.
Yeah.
It's my mum. She's 85, and she's been a widow now for 10 years, and my dad's been gone 10 years. So to keep her occupied, she knits these things,
Wow.
these beautiful poppies. It takes about half an hour to do one, and we sell them for £2.50 each. And she sold thousands of them. We sold 150 at the weekend in Norfolk at an event. So that's brought in a lot of money. And then it's traditional things, really, like quiz nights. And we've had comedy nights, and a mate of mine plays in a band, so they've put events on. And also for my sins, I'm a football referee. So, we get paid for appearing in games, doing games. So all that money goes to the charity as well. So it's lots of different ways, really. And also by putting tours around Northampton, where I live. Wherever you live in the country, the First World War is all around you. Yeah. Because there'll be Commonwealth War Graves Commission plots or individual graves in your local church. There'll be buildings and houses that soldiers lived in that have got stories to tell. So what I did is started just after lockdown, before people would go to the battlefields. I started putting tours on around Northampton where we told these stories. We've got 2 Victoria Cross medals in our local museum.
Wow.
Coming from Northampton, Northampton produced something like 60% of all the boots that the soldiers wore in the First World War, and some of those factories are still there. So we did those tours, and we're still doing them, to be honest. And again, people make donations to the charity.
Yeah, I think that's incredible.
And it's been a long time. It's not been 60,000 in the last couple of years. It's been over 8 years. Of course.
Well, what's been amazing is training for this Frontline Walk. Is that yeah. Well, apart from having the miles to put in, it makes you want to go and do miles in places you've not been to kind of change it up. And I've really kind of explored my local area, and I like to do that anyway, but this is to a new extent. And I was out even on Sunday just gone down towards the Gower and Swansea that way.
Yeah.
First time I've been across the coastal path in that area, and even across there was plenty of gun what they called
defensive
placements and stuff like that I'd had no idea existed until I literally walked past them. And it really is amazing what is all around us, and we don't really
never go past the church without going in and having a look around, because the rule was, when the Commonwealth War Graves Commission was established in 1917, it was then called the Imperial War Graves Commission, is that if you died abroad, you were buried abroad or remembered abroad, if there was no body. But if you came back to England, or you died in England through disease or an accident or of your wounds, then you had a grave in England. You could be returned to the family. So in virtually every church that you pass, there's going to be a grave in there. Sometimes 1, sometimes 2, and there could be a plot as well. In some of the bigger towns, a whole plot of them. So when people are doing their training, or even if they're not, they're just out for a Sunday stroll, always go in and have a look and also go inside the church as well. If you live in rural areas, the churches are left open most of the time. You can go in and see the most beautiful memorials on the wall with so much information on them. It's all there. Plus, of course, in the villages, you've got all the war memorials as well.
Fantastic. So, the Battlefield Tales from the Battlefield podcast.
Yes.
Is that something you do quite often, or is this kind of a one-off thing?
It started earlier this year. I was listening. There's obviously podcasts, as you know, have really taken off since lockdown, and there's been a few about World War I, but not that many, to be honest, not that many. And I thought to myself, I was on holiday actually, and I thought, I was listening to someone doing a podcast, and I thought, well, of all these stories that I've built up, all these soldiers that I've researched, they're waiting to be told, and the only people that know about them at the moment are the people that I've taken on tours. So I thought, well, it's an opportunity to get their stories out there, because they're not the famous stories, they're the stories of soldiers that you wouldn't know much about, but they've all got incredible stories to tell. And I thought, well, I'll just have a go and see. To be honest, I didn't even know whether I'd be able to handle the technology side of things, because I'm not very good at technology, and that's putting it lightly. But I went on YouTube, and I got some great advice from a man called Paul Reed, who does a very successful podcast called The Old Frontline, Paul runs Ledger Tours that I work for, and he's one of the leading military historians, and he's very open with his advice and help. And he got me off the ground, to be honest, with the first 2 or 3. I thought, I'll see how it goes. And then I started to interview people as well, and that proved very successful. It was a slow start, which I understand is typical for podcasts, but it seems to be building now all the time in terms of downloads and people following it. I'm still getting used to all the technical terms as well.
Yeah.
Involved.
Well, I have actually listened to his podcast quite a few times on my training walks, so that's kind of cool to see that he's helped you out. And you know,
he's brilliant.
Yeah, when something's been established for a while like his has, you know, it could quite easily have just kind of left you to that. But I appreciate the fact he's helped you there.
Yeah, I rang him straight away when I had the idea. I rang him and said, "What do you think?" He said, "Well, this is how you do it technically." Yeah. He says, "Depends what you're going to talk about. If you're going to talk about yourself, then no one's going to listen." I said, "Paul, if I did a podcast about myself, I wouldn't listen, let alone anyone else."
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. It really is very insightful. I'll have to check yours out as well, because that's what I've been doing a lot when I'm walking on my own. Got my earphones in, and it's been quite a good thing to do. And lately I've been listening to the audiobook that is All Quiet on the Western Front, and that is absolutely incredible, which I'm halfway into at the moment, and I can't wait to finish it. It's such an insightful story, which just shows the actual just not just the horrors, but even the terminology used by obviously German soldiers at the time. Is very similar to the kind of British forces sort of slang and talking about sort of the styles of people in the forces.
They were the same as us, these German guys. We always tell this story whenever we go to the battlefield, and I'm not sure whether you will see a German. Yes, you are. On day 2, the Arras Day on the Frontline Walk, you'll start at a German cemetery, and you know, we have to remember that these guys were just the same as us. They were young men fighting for the country, and a lot of them had worked in London before the war. You know, they'd worked in the hotels or as barbers. And a lot of the officers had been to our universities, and they could speak, as German people do now, perfect English. And our soldiers, when they met the Germans, for whatever reason, wounded, captured, they were shocked, because they weren't these beastly Huns that they were told they were. They were just like me and you.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
You know, experiencing exactly the same things. The fear, the anxieties, worried about their families at home. You know, worrying about their families more than what they were themselves. They're exactly the same, aren't they? Exactly the same stories as what we read from our guys' reminiscences.
Yeah, I would advise anyone to check that book out or to listen to the audiobook. It is so good. But yeah, it's amazing that the fact that they put so much detail into that story about the stories they told and talked to each other about, and just remember so much detail. It's incredible. But let's talk about the ABF Soldiers Frontline Charity Walk then. Because it's something that at this point of recording is exactly 3 weeks away, I believe. That's right.
Yes, because I'm doing the first week, which we're going to Normandy, and yours is the second one, I think. When you're doing the Western Front one, the First World War one, where you started at Lochnagar Crater and ended at the Menin Gate. And I promise you, I want to see you recording something as you try and cross the finish line at the Menin Gate on the Saturday afternoon, because you won't be able to speak.
Okay. Well, my plan is to actually try and vlog some of this, and I really hope to get some people's stories along the way, and even if possible, depends on the people, they mic up some of the people talking about the history as well. But
you've got some on that tour, mate. You won't be able to stop them talking. Yeah, you've got a very well-known actor as well that's on the first week.
Okay,
a guy that's appeared in lots of television programs.
Are you able to say?
Jason Dunn is his name. And about 10, 12 years ago, he was the star of Waterloo Road, a TV program about school. And I think he played Tom, the school teacher, in that. And he's been in lots of things since, including he played a very minor part in the Band of Brothers.
Oh, wow.
In one of the episodes, he's only in it for about a minute.
Yeah.
In lots of things since. He was a murderer in Death in Paradise recently. So he's done the walk once before, and he's doing it this year. He's part of the group that call themselves the Rugby Relics.
Right, I've seen those. Yeah,
being talked about. Yeah, you won't be able to stop them from talking. They're noisy.
Well, one thing I've picked up is the fact that this walk has been done multiple times by people. Yeah. So that tells me it's not all that bad at some stage. Maybe like after you finish, you think, oh, it wasn't that bad, but so it gives me hope that it's going to be a really enjoyable experience from all the
Honestly, it will be an experience like no other. I can't express how it's going to be to someone in this environment that's not done it before, because you can't put it into words. It's the emotions of learning the stories. You've got Steve Roberts there, who's the official historian for the charity, who I wrote the book with, that's at the top of the screen there. And he's one of the country's leading guides on the Western Front. There's nothing that Steve doesn't know, and he's got a great way of putting it over. So you've got Steve telling you all these fantastic stories. You'll then have other people on the walk that are also very knowledgeable about things that you're going to see. And then there's actually seeing these places as well, seeing the cemeteries. And all the time, you've got the emotions being heightened by your fatigue kicking in as the 3 days go on, and the pain setting in. And therefore, your emotions are heightened as a result. I think that's the only way I can describe it. And you've also got the camaraderie with these people. Because you touched on this at the start of our chat. When you meet at Wellington Barracks, you'll see that a lot of people will know each other, and they'll be, hugging each other and all the rest of it. By the time you get on that coach, you will be part of the family, and you'll start to bond with people. And you bond with people, as you know, from your time in the military, when you're in pain, because they'll drag you along. And that's what it'll be like. About half of them will probably be veterans, and the other half will be civilians like me. Yeah. And, it's a real cross section of people. And by the end of it, they'll be friends for life, as you can see from the Facebook group.
I like the way you said pain twice in that comment there. Just putting that out there.
There's definitely pain in there, emotional pain and physical pain.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited by it. So I assume then you're going a week before me. So you've got 2 weeks till you go.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, we go on the 3rd of October, I think, 4th of October, something like that. Yeah. Are you
feeling prepped, or by this stage are you kind of like, I know how to do this?
Oh no, I've still got to do the work every year, because I'm getting older. I'm 58 now, and when I started doing this, the first year, 2014, 8 years ago, I was just turned 50. So between 50 and 58 is a long time, and I do feel it. I do feel it when I'm doing the training walks. And in 2019, we did Normandy then, and I hadn't done enough training that year for one reason or another, and I got shin splints. Have you ever had shin splints?
Once, yeah.
Halfway through the second day, I got shin splints. Every step was agony. But the ambassador on our tour that year was a guy called Andy Reid. And Andy Reid was in the Yorkshire Regiment in 2008, and he stepped on an IED device, improvised explosive device, and it blew off both legs and one arm. So he's doing the Frontline Walk. His stories in our book, and there's pictures of him. And he's doing this walk in an improvised wheelchair. It's like a cross between a wheelchair and a bike, with his one hand willing it. And there's me walking along, moaning about shin splints. And this bloke's next to me with no legs and one arm. I couldn't say anything, could I?
No, of course not. I mean, that's just incredible. And I'm often amazed by people that have been through these traumatic experiences and they've had to go through the rehabilitation. And so many people who've not been through that would think they wouldn't know how to deal with it. But so many people you see come through that and are so determined afterwards. It's just incredible.
Well, Andy tells the story. Tells the story about when it happened. And I'm not sure who your ambassador is that's coming on your walk, but he does this amazing talk, and he says that he went into unconsciousness when it happened, and he woke up 6 days later in a hospital in Birmingham, military hospital in Birmingham. They put him into an induced coma. And they got him back to, is it Selly Oak, the military hospital in Birmingham? They got him back there within 6 hours, British Army, operated on him, saved his life. They woke him up 6 days later, and when he woke up, there was his girlfriend, Claire, and his mum and dad looking at him. And he could see him, himself, that he'd lost all these limbs. And he thought to himself at the time, I'm not going to be a victim. He said, it was my responsibility, nobody else. He didn't blame the Taliban. He didn't blame the British Army or the government. He didn't blame his mate that was in front of him for not spotting the IED. He said, I blame myself. It's my responsibility. I chose to be there. So he said he was going to set himself some targets as part of his recovery. He was going to walk down the aisle when I got married to Claire 6 months later, which he did. They've now got 2 children. He said he was going to set up his own business, which he has. I think he's got a nightclub as well, and up in St Helens in Merseyside. And he goes around the country doing public speaking to corporate companies. And he said that he was going to be on parade on Remembrance Sunday, which he was, with 2 false legs.
Wow.
And that's what's driven him on. And he's become an ambassador for the charity. The charity, he was one of the beneficiaries of the charity. And the charity funded the conversion of his bungalow so that he could continue living there with his wife and now 2 children.
Wow, is incredible.
He's a real inspiration. He's a real inspiration. He's not the only one. You know, we've had other ambassadors along as well, whose details are in the book. But yeah, meeting Andy, it's a life-changing experience, especially for a civilian. You know, because I've never met these people before. These type of people.
When you mentioned your book a few times there, which rightly you described is up in the top corner there, the Frontline Walk, the book. You co-wrote this with someone else, but could you tell us a bit more about it for people interested?
Yeah, what we did, I forgot what year it was now, 2017, something like that. So before the crisis, we were in the bar one night at the end of the Frontline Walk, and Steve Roberts, the official historian, and me, we were saying, you know, we really ought to write down some of these stories and publish a book, you know. And then we carried on having our glass of Belgian beer, and I thought no more about it. And then the next night, we were having the debrief, and Steve announces to 100 people that we're going to write a book. I've never written a book before, but he had. You know, he's a published author. I thought, oh my God. So that was it then. You know, everyone cheered, you know. So I thought, well, we better do something about it. So
committed at that point, yeah. Yes.
So we found a publisher and we crowdfunded it. We crowdfunded it from businesses. The charity put some money in, and a lot of the walkers did as well. So it meant that every copy that we sold was pure profit for the Soldiers Charity. Anyway, what happened then was, the crisis came along by the time we'd actually got round to writing it up and publishing it. And I think it was about 18 months ago that we finally published it. And it's £20. You can get it from the Soldiers Charity online shop. And if you get it from that source, then all of the money goes back to the charity. Obviously, if you buy it from Amazon or anybody else like that, then they take a big cut out of it. So it's better. And it's the book contains details of the charity. It talks about the Frontline Walk and the history of all the battlefields that we walk. But most importantly, what we've done, we've picked 50 walkers, 50 fundraisers, and we've looked at the reason why they've done the Frontline Walk.
Wow.
Which in most cases is a relative that they're thinking of, that they're following in the footsteps of. And there are some incredible stories in there. You know, one that springs to mind, there's a guy, his grandparents met through the First World War. His granddad had been wounded, looked after in a military hospital, and the nurse that looked after him, they fell in love, and then they got married. You know, incredible. There's all sorts of happy stories, and obviously some very sad stories as well. So it's really it's not a textbook. It's not a book that you're going to take on holiday and read. It's a sort of book that you have on a coffee table and you browse when Coronation Street's on, or sometimes you know, your partner's watching the telly. It's that sort of thing.
Well, I will certainly be picking that up, and I also want to get one of those poppies that you had earlier. I think I could get that on my bag at some point for my walks.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, we'll get some sent to you. Yeah,
that would be great. Is there a battlefield location that you haven't visited that you want to?
Verdun, probably, I would say, is top of that list from the First World War. Verdun was one of the reasons why the Battle of the Somme happened, because the French were being bled at Verdun, 100 miles south of the Somme, by the German army. You know, they were attacking that fortress there, and the casualties on both sides were horrendous. And there's a lot of it still there, apparently, at Verdun. But I think, looking at the Second World War, we talked about doing this a number of times with the Frontline Walk, is the battlefield which was happening now, actually, in 1944, is Arnhem. Arnhem, the Battle of Arnhem. I've never been to Arnhem other than sailing up the Rhine and sailing past it. I've never been there, and I really would like to go there at some stage and find out all about that. Because, again, thinking back to my childhood, I remember watching that film, A Bridge Too Far. Remember the film, A Bridge Too Far, with my dad. and he explained to me all about it. So I'd really love to go and see the battlefields of Arnhem.
Sounds fantastic. And what is there one in particular you've been to more than any other? Have you got a favourite? I say a favourite, you know what
definitely
I mean.
The Somme. Yeah, no, it's the right word. Definitely the Somme. The main battlefields that we visit, obviously Normandy. That I do Normandy with Ledger and also some private tours. But I'm forever being drawn back to Ypres, of course, because so many British soldiers died there, and both of my relatives served there. But it's to the Somme, and it's because of my great uncle Henry. But it's also a beautiful area of France. As you'll see when you walk it in a few weeks' time, it seems to be big skies all of the time, and the fields seem to go on forever because they're not enclosed. Like our fields in this country are enclosed by hedges from the agricultural revolution. They didn't have that in France. So everything seems to be very quiet once you get away from the main road that goes through the middle of the battlefield. And it's just, I don't know, it's just very, very beautiful. And it means so much to me because of my family history that are there. And also I've got good friends that I've made on the Somme battlefields. The billet that we use on Terry's tours is called Number 56, Bed and Breakfast. And it's run by an English couple, one of my podcasts, one of the early podcasts, we interviewed them. And they live right on the German front line in Les Boissettes, about 500 yards away from the Lochingar crater where you'll start. So over the years, they've become very good friends, personal friends. And a lot of the people that have done the Frontline Walk have then wanted to go back to the Somme to look at it in more detail, and they've ended up staying at Number 56 as well.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah, that sounds really cool. Wow, okay. So what advice would you give someone, say, that was in my shoes, I guess a year ago? Because I started, strangely enough, I was told like 2 days ago that it was a year ago I started doing my first steps for this walk. So almost been training a year. A bit weird.
But you'll be fine then.
Yeah, maybe. For someone who might be thinking about signing up, because it took me quite a big sort of life experience to take that plunge. Have you got any tips for someone who might be thinking about it?
Yeah. Firstly, do it. Don't put it off, because you never know what's around the corner in your life. So do it. It is, you think, oh, blimey. And when I did, I thought I'm not going to know anyone, which I didn't that first year. But as I said a number of times in this podcast, that you soon get to know people very, very well. You have to raise a minimum of £1,250 by, I can't remember what the cut-off date is. But if you sign up a year before, break that down into chunks. If you do it whole year, then you've only got £100 a month to raise. And you can do that, yes, by asking people to sponsor you. But if you put on a quiz night, get someone to help you do it, you can raise that in one night.
Yeah.
Because people, they like a good night out, they like a good laugh and a good quiz night. I charge them £10 a ticket, and that includes, I'll get someone to sponsor the food, and you can have a raffle and an auction or whatever you want to do, so you can raise it. So my advice is do it, and do the training properly. And if you can, get people to do the training with you, because if you're going to walk 15 or 16 miles in a day and you haven't got a podcast to listen to, Tales of the Battlefields or the Old Front Line, then it's tedious, isn't it? It's boring when you're walking on your own, unless you've got something spectacular to look at, like like the Pembrokeshire coast. So do it, break the training down into chunks, break the fundraising down into chunks, and do the training properly. Make the time to do it, because if you don't, you'll end up in the foot clinic at night, and the army medics that are doing the foot clinic, they're not very sympathetic. Or you end up on what they call the jack bus, the jacket-in bus.
Oh, not getting on that bus.
No, I've never yet been on it. In 8 years, we missed one year because of COVID. I've never yet been on that bus. And unless something bad happens, I'm not getting on it ever.
Yeah, no, I can't do that. So for people watching, then I agree completely. I'm walking on my own. I'm training on my own, getting the prep in, because I know what it's like to go into an event unprepared, and it's not nice. So get ahead of it. And it's really surprised me. Like a couple of days ago, I actually hit the fundraising target, which has blown my mind.
Brilliant.
So thank you to everybody that's donated to me. But also, I'm amazed how people really responded to this event, and you'd be amazed at yourself as well. So I wouldn't stress about that. I think it's the end of the year we get to fundraise until as well.
Yes,
I think it's
yeah.
600
I think you had to have
by
a minimum half of it you had to collect, didn't you, by the 1st of July or something?
Yeah, so halfway through the year, and the rest by the end of the year. So, and I've, as I said, I've hit that target now. So I wouldn't stress about that either. And the help I've had just on the Facebook group from you guys and other people has been amazing as well. So the support is there, definitely.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
So yeah, in this time 20 to 8, while this show is on, Terry, what will I be doing on the very first day at this time of night? Do you know?
At 20 to 8 on the first day, having done.
Will we still be walking or
no? You'll be up very, very early.
Okay.
The first day on the Wednesday, you meet at Wellington Barracks. It's a travel day. So you'll get there, if all the connections work properly, late afternoon, and you'll go to a cemetery at Arras, and the memorial to the missing at the Arras Memorial, and Steve Roberts, the military historian, will set the scene, and then you'll go and have a meal. Then the next day, the first day of your walk, you'll be up very, very early, a long time before dawn, and I can't remember the exact time we leave, probably about 6:30, something like that. And by 7:30, you're then at Lochnagar Crater, just as the sun is rising, and then you start your walk. You will walk, then it will take you 22 miles to get to Heberturn, where you finish at Heberturn on day 1 of the Frontline Walk, where you'll have a beer. There's a little bar there. You have a beer and you'll need it. And then you return to the hotel in Arras, which is about 3/4 of an hour, half an hour, 3/4 of an hour. And you'll then have your meal. And some of them, the hardened veterans, will then progress into the bar, where they'll stay, or they'll head down into Arras. And the weak, measly, puny veteran civilians like me slope off to bed.
Yeah. It sounds like a nice thing to go and slope off to the bar, but also I know I need to sleep. So it's like,
Yeah. So you're at this time, 20 to 8. Yeah, you'll be having your meal. Before the meal, before you have your meal, you'll have a debrief on the day from Classic Challenge, who are a very important part of the team because they manage everything. There's the charity Use Classic Challenge, and Lucy runs that, and she's got a team of people, and they keep you safe during the day, and then also give you lots of advice about how to hydrate properly, eat properly. And another piece of advice I'd give to people is whatever you do, at the end of the day, don't stay in your room and have room service. Because people do. Get downstairs, mix with the others, talk about the day, compare your aches and pains, maybe have a glass of wine if you want to, but socialise and get stuck in with everybody else. Don't hide yourself away in a room as some people do, because it just makes things worse. The pain hurts more if you're in your room and you're not talking to other people.
Well, it's that opportunity, like you said, to get the stories from other people as well, and enhance that experience. I don't see why you'd want to really kind of take yourself away when you got that sort of wealth of knowledge around you. And
well, I think this has happened in the past, from what I've been told. Obviously, I don't know who these people are.
They're in the hotel room, that's why. Yeah. Well, and you, of course, this will be playing on the week that I'm walking, so you would have finished by now.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So ours is Normandy. Normandy beaches, the Second World War beaches, and I think we end this time. We're going to be ending at the Normandy Memorial, which was only opened in 2017. So we're going to be finishing there, and it's a beautiful memorial that overlooks what was called Gold Beach in the British sector on D-Day. So that's going to be a very special experience as well. And as I say, it's an area that I've been covering, guiding for leisure tours, doing coach tours. So to do it on foot is a very different experience to being in a coach, and talking on a microphone to 40 odd people.
Okay, so you've not actually done the Frontline Walk, the Normandy beaches on foot?
We did it once in 2019. That was just that one time. But we're doing a different itinerary, a different plan this time, different routes, slightly different routes, been improved upon. So I thought it would be. I've done the Western Front one, I think 5 times, something like that. So I thought I'll do something different this year.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel?
I'm hoping to try and get out there for the end of your walk, but it just depends on a few other things as well. So, sorry, I interrupted you then.
No, it's all right. Do you feel like there's a difference physically in the 2 walks?
Yes, I would say so. As you'll find out on day 2 of your walk, day 2 is the Arras day, and there's 2 rather steep hills that day.
Okay.
One is up Vimy Ridge. You end up Vimy Ridge, and the other one in the morning, the last part of the morning, there's a long stretch of about 10 miles, something like that. And as you head up to the National French Cemetery, there's 45,000, I think it's 45,000 French burials there. But it's a very steep hill through the woods, and the French themselves in 1915, I think they had lost something like 100,000 dead on those slopes. So you've got to get up there, have your lunch, then you go back down the valley and then up to Vimy Ridge where you end the second day. We haven't got any major inclines like that on the Normandy. Obviously, we've got sand to walk on as well to a certain extent. Not much of that in on the Somme. So yes, it is different. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of my walks recently, training walks, I've thought when I've looked at them online, they're not looking too hilly, and then I've been out on them and they've been ridiculous. So I think I'm prepared for hills. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I've got the prep in for those.
I think on that second day, you know, when we walk from Mount Saint Aloy, we have our tea break in the morning, and the name of this French cemetery, it slipped my mind. I can't think what it's called. It's a French National Cemetery, and it's such a long way. Most of it's on the flat until that last 2 miles, something like that, 3K. It's quite up through this steep forest. But when you get there, it's worth it, because what you see when you get to the top is absolutely incredible.
It sounds fantastic, Terry. I am absolutely excited to be going to this, and I'm glad that he took that step. And obviously, if people are thinking about it, of course, do so, like Terry said. And I hope you really enjoy your sort of walk as well. So hopefully I'll see you on the last day in France.
Yeah, I'll try and get
Belgium even.
Yeah, and that would be a fantastic evening, because as you cross the Menin Gate, and the Soldiers Charity staff put the medal over your neck, and the emotions run, you then go and have a shower. You know, you then put your suit on if you want to wear a suit, and your medals, if you're a veteran or a serving soldier. And then there's the gala meal that we have in the Grote Market in Ypres, which is an iconic place, you know, where the cloth hall overlooks it. And you then can relax, and there'll be some speeches, and people will tell some jokes and that sort of thing. And again, then some people do go on and make a night of it. But you really are hurting at that stage. But the emotions, the emotions and the relief. And in fact, last year, some poor bloke, he'd done the entire walk without an issue, no issues whatsoever. He ruptured his Achilles heel walking into the restaurant. He tripped over the step on the way in, ruptured his heel.
Oh, that is terrible. Oh, wow. That's incredible. I will definitely try not to. I think the last night will be, that sounds like it'll be very sort of like an accomplishment feeling, and just something very fond, a memory that I'll be fond of. And what bothers me is the next day when we travel back, and then I got a coach from London back to Wales that night as well.
Yes.
And that's due to be back in at 12 midnight.
Oh, that is a long day.
Yeah. So I've definitely been wise to take the next day off after that as well. Yeah,
good thinking. Yeah, you do need to do that emotionally as well as physically.
Yeah. But I'm sure it's going to be worth it, and I'm really looking forward to it. So Terry, I think we'll wrap it up, and I think I need to get some sleep in by the sound of it.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Good luck.
Terry, thank you so much for joining me. And I really do want one of those poppies, so I'll get in contact with you about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll get one sent down.
And for the guys watching,
I'll arrange for them to be sent to someone from around here. Take a bag full, and then, because I know there'll be other people on the tour who want some as well, so I'll get them sent down.
Yeah, brilliant. And for those watching who are interested in Terry's website, I'll leave a link for you. And for the Frontline Walk book, please do pick that up and sponsor and support the charity where you can. And of course, if you're thinking about it, sign up.
And if anyone does want any of these poppies, again, I'm quite happy to post them as well. If there's sort of 3 or 4 that people want, make it worthwhile to post them. £2.50.
If they do want one of those, Terry, how do they get in contact? Email, is it?
Email me through the website, terry@terrystours.co.uk, and then we'll go from there. And of course, if anyone wants any research done on First World War soldiers, I'm quite happy to do that as well.
We will be chatting about that, Terry. Guys, thank you for watching, and I hope you got some value out of this. Please do share and like and all that good stuff, and check out Terry's podcast. And sorry, what's the name of the other podcast you mentioned?
Tales from the Battlefields.
That's the one. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, guys, and please look after yourselves. I will see you in about a week when I'm kind of hobbling home, I think. Bye, guys. Thank you.